Welcome to this Killik Explains finance video. This week, an important topic, not easy to do, but vital that you understand it, how to avoid psychopaths and boost your wealth. So, with no more ado, what makes a good money manager? A quick reminder. Well, the traits we tend to look for in professionals include the following. And this is not just limited to people you hand over your money to, by the way. Confidence, a little bit of arrogance, dominant personalities, charm, quick thinking with numbers and so on, good argument skills, robustness and reassurance. So we tend to look for those sort of people because we think, well, they'll be a good bet when it comes to managing our long-term wealth and so on. However, a study I'm about to put up suggests what we may be getting when we fall for all of this is something a lot darker. We may be getting a psychopath, more about that in a moment, a Machiavellian, or a narcissist. In a worst case, somebody that combines all three of those dark traits as they're known. And you might be thinking, I don't really care, but you should care, because according to a study recently, that could mean you are handing your money over to someone who underperforms. Okay, so why this matters? The study then. So a team led by Leanne Ten Brink at the University of Denver looked at these dark triad of personality traits, if you like. Their target group for their study was 101 hedge fund managers. You might say, well, how representative of that? More about it in a moment. So 101 hedge fund managers, a decent sized group, and what they did was this. Over a 10-year period, 2005-2015, that includes the big financial crisis, of course, they recorded extensive video interviews with a focus on explaining process and performance. They watched the interviews closely. Now, the people being interviewed didn't realise that they were part of a study. That's pretty crucial, and you can read from the paper direct how all this was done. This is a summary. They also, alongside that, reviewed returns from the flagship funds for each one of those 101 hedge fund management groups, combined all that together and had the results, which I'm about to give you in a moment, audited by the University of California, Berkeley, just to say, well, does this actually stack up? And the results are interesting, is one word, slightly alarming is possibly another. So, here we go. The results were what exactly? Now, first of all, some stats. The median AUM of each firm was 4.64 billion. So these are people who control a decent amount of assets, basically. The average annualized returns for the entire group of 101 hedge fund managers in the study, 7.27%, which is pretty healthy, bearing in mind that included a very difficult period, around 2007-2008. And the average for the hedge fund research index, 4.36%. So what that tells you is this group of 101 hedge fund managers were outperforming the peer group as defined by the hedge fund research index, which has its flaws and so on, but it's a broad sweep, a picture of how the rest of the industry is performing. So this is a group of decent sized firms delivering consistently above average performance over the study period. Right, now for the interesting bit, as I call it. The psychotic managers, as identified from those interviews, from those reactions, those personality traits and so on, delivered almost 1% less on average each year than that broader group of outperforming managers. And that is significant. For example, you could look at that a number of ways. If you'd handed over $1 million, lucky you, to one of these guys in that group, then potentially you would be $162,000 worse off, all other things being equal, ignoring fees and so on, at the end of it. So that is significant. And personality traits, therefore, so the authors of the study, seem to influence performance. Right then, question then is, who are these underperforming psychotic hedge fund managers? What sorts of personality traits do they display? And there are three. Now, this is condensing a huge amount of stuff into 3 slides, but in a nutshell, who do you look out for? Machiavellians tend to be people who value money, power and winning above all. They also, right, because that's, you might say, well, that's anyone who works in the city, but they also will ignore social norms and lie and deceive to get you to hand money over and about their subsequent performance and so on. They're crafty. And thirdly, they're able to feign compassion. They're only out for themselves. So the markets dip a bit. They'll come across as terribly empathetic and sympathetic, in the back of their minds thinking, I don't really care as long as I get my fees. So, number one, the Machiavellian. Part of this group of underperformers. Number one of the dark triad personality traits, if you like. Number two, the sociopath or psychopath. And some of you out there will argue about whether I've got the definition right. Psychologists argue about this still. But broadly speaking, we're looking at no brake pedal, incredibly short-tempered, fly off the handle for the smallest possible thing, basically. Number two, they lack guilt, remorse, sympathy and pity. Couldn't give a monkeys about your situation and what's happened to your money, basically. And thirdly, they're pretty calculating and pragmatic. Now, easy for me to write this down, if you like, less easy to spot. More about that in a moment. And then you have the narcissist, all right? And this falls into sort of, again, three things you might look for. Number one, self-centered, vain, projectors and deflectors. Now, what that means at the bottom, projectors are people who basically put their own weaknesses onto other people as a way of deflecting their own weaknesses. So in other words, attack is their best form of defense. They're unable to take or respond to criticism. The moment you criticize them, all right, they fly off the handle, and that tends to put people off criticizing them, and they look to get to the top of their businesses so that they can pass blame down. It's never their fault. Now, some people will be thinking, how good is this study as a way of sort of generalizing personality traits that could damage your wealth? Well, it does have its critics, clearly. The review period included the financial crisis, and you are looking at a pool of 101 hedge fund managers as the target group within the study. These traits are to some degree subjective. It's easy for me to say there are 3 types of psychotic personality, watch out for them, but actually the definitions and the borders are quite blurred in practice, and the result doesn't prove its opposite. So in other words, if you were to say, right, well, I'm not going to pick a money manager who displays any of those characteristics, and that means I'll make an extra 0.88% per year, doesn't work quite that simply, unfortunately. So some guidelines. What can you actually make of this study and take away from this, if you like? Number one, you do want some of the following characteristics. When you're choosing somebody to manage money for you, let's say hedge fund manager or not, you want honesty and openness. Smokes their own dope is my way of saying they put their money where their mouth is. So ask them, are you invested in your own strategy, skin in the game and all that stuff? Good track record in good years and bad years. How do they react to bad crisis situations? All right, if it's all your fault, if they fly off the handle, if it's nothing to do with them, well, watch out. Do they balance youth and experience? Now, this is no guarantee, but someone once said to me, when you're picking a hospital consultant, you want someone in their 40s or early 50s. They've done enough cases and they're not yet bored. All right, so worth bearing in mind. Also, they've survived long enough to be credible amongst their peer group, and that's important. And they pass my 3-way sniff test. This is while they're charming you, bamboozling you, and so on. Just sit back and think, do I like you? Do I trust you? Realistically, am I going to give you my money? Okay. It's not foolproof, but it's worth thinking about. Final word then. Not all of those dark triad traits are definitively bad. You want people that are competitive. You want people that are out to win. You want people that will make you money. But what the study shows is you do not really want to see egotism, manipulation, and lack of conscience. Those are energy-draining personality traits that don't add a bean to your money, if you like. So there you have it. Any questions? It's a big study, editor@killik.com. If you'd like to see other videos around behavioural psychology from me, killik.com/learn.